On today's episode, we're going to talk about the new NBA lottery rules, how they affect the Chicago Bulls, and why the Chicago Bulls are one of the teams that's actually going to benefit from the new rules, at least initially, and why, after years of judging the team for not tanking, not paying the luxury tax, the NBA has gone in a direction where the Chicago Bulls and the way they operated are actually going to benefit them in this new era of the NBA. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, we're going to talk about the coaching search and why it could be held up by Sean Sweeney, which a lot of you guys have called out. And lastly, we're also going to talk about why, with all the mocks after the withdrawal period and everything else, the more interesting pick for the Chicago Bulls and the more interesting area in the NBA draft overall is going to be pick 6 through 20. We're going to talk about the variance there, how it could affect the level of talent that the Chicago Bulls can get there. We'll talk about all that plus more right after this. What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host there, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. But before we start the content, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. As many of you know, we have a goal of getting to 50,000 subscribers before the start of the 2026-27 season, which is a very lofty goal. We got about 5 months to get there. That's gaining almost 9,000 or 19,000 subscribers in 5 months, but we're going to be putting in some heavy work to get in there. You guys already know we got some of the best draft analysis in the world, and leading into the 2 weeks before the draft, we're going to get back heavy into our draft bag and kind of refine some of the coverage that we've had before. So if you don't want to miss anything, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, help a brother out with that. But with that said, let's go ahead and get into it, man. This is just this whole turn of events, right? I started to put out a live stream yesterday after the new lottery rules kind of came out, but I wanted to wait, right? Because I knew everybody was going to jump on it, and I wanted to kind of wait and just kind of sit back and see some of the reactions to it, right? These new lottery rules, I'm going to try to explain them as simple as possible, just because I know it can get very in the weeds, right? So just as a focus on this and to like I said, just to explain this as best that I can. They're calling it the new 3-2-1 lottery odd rules, and that's because the three lottery and the way that they're going to do it is different, right? So it's going to be picks 1 through 15 are all going to be lottery now, meaning that there's going to be a drawing for every single pick. Before, it was just the top 4 picks were in the lottery, and then everything after that all fell by draft order. It's not going to be that anymore. So, all picks, I think it's 1 through 16 actually now, are all going to be lottery picks. So everything's going to be a drawing for every pick. So that means there's going to be a wide variance of odds, right? And it's called the 3-2-1 system because 3 lottery balls, the way that you look, are awarded to the 7 non-playoff and non-play-in teams, meaning the 4th worst through the 10th worst records. They have an 8.1% chance at the number 1 overall pick. That's flattened odds. They have a flattened 8.1% chance at the number 1 picks. This is where mid teams have the best chance at the top picks. So technically, if you're a mid team, you have a better chance. We'll talk about what that means for the Chicago Bulls here in a second, right? Then you have the 2 lottery ball odds, right? That's awarded to the 3 bottom teams. That's as well as 9 and 10. So you have the 3 bottom teams that were the worst records, and then 9 and 10. So that means that teams that actually make the playoffs as an 8 seed now also are going to get a chance at the number 1 overall pick. They're going to be included in this lottery system. They have a 5.4% chance to land the number 1 pick. So, that goes right there. That is the largest change, is the fact that the bottom 3 teams in the league have the same odds as the 2 teams that actually made the playoffs as the 8 seed. And so, that does not incentivize losing for the bottom 3 teams anymore. And that is what the biggest thing here and the biggest alteration to this is the worst teams, bottom and out, is now dead. We'll explain that more in a minute. And then 1 lottery ball is awarded to the losers of the 7th versus 8 playing games as well. They'll have a 2.7% chance at the top pick. But other than that, everything else is even, right? And so there are some draft penalties that are in this as well, right? All 16 spots are drawn. So all 16 picks from 1 through 16 are all lottery teams, meaning that a team could fall much further than it could before. It used to be if you had the worst record in the league, the worst you could fall is to number 5, right? Now, technically, you can have the worst record in the league and fall all the way down, right? The bottom 3 teams can fall to number 12 overall. That is the lowest that they can fall. So even if you have the worst record in the league, you can end up with the 12th overall pick back to this. And so there's also back-to-back restrictions. Teams are prohibited from winning the number 1 overall pick in back-to-back years. Not to say that that's always happened a lot. There's very few times that that's happened, but there's no longer, you can't get the number 1 overall pick in back-to-back years anymore. There are also top 5 limits as well. Teams are restricted from landing a top 5 pick in 3 consecutive years. Now, that does impact the Chicago Bulls because we have the number 4 overall pick. So meaning that if for some reason we fall in the top 5 over the next 3 years, we are not going to be able to fall in the top 5 after that year. So at the most, the Bulls can have 2 more years after this season of top 5 picks, if you want to look at it just in a simple way of how it impacts the Chicago Bulls. Protected picks are also now. Teams are no longer permitted to protect draft picks from 12 to 15, meaning you can have top 11 protections on picks, and that's it. And there's also now a heavier league oversight in this to where the commissioner's office can discipline teams or strip away teams of lottery odds and alter lottery draft positions if they are found to blatantly be trying not to win basketball games. So that's a large overview of the new tanking rules. How does this all impact the Bulls? Well, since the Bulls have not been a bottom 3 team in the league, nor have had the number 1 pick in the last handful of years, they're not impacted really at all. Now, I did say because we have the number 4 overall pick in this year's draft, it means we can only get another top 5 pick 2 more years in a row. But that's really it, right? We have all of our own first-round picks, so because we haven't sent out picks, they're not heavily protected or anything else. We don't have any protected first-round picks from any teams. We're not affected in that. And the Bulls now can focus on just building the best team possible and focus on development and let the chips fall where they may. That means both in being good or being bad. Teams are now incentivized to try to be as good as possible. So that means that now if we hire a Sean Sweeney, Chris Quinn, that we have players like a Josh Giddey, Modest Buzelis, our number 4, number 15 pick, Noah Essengay, these players, you are now incentivized to actually play to win, which is good for development. I always think that the only thing that I had a problem with tanking is that the impact that can have on pieces that are on your roster that you do plan to have long term. Now, because you are incentivized to actually win basketball games, it means that development has to be the focus and develop it the right way. I always have thought that developing in structure is the best thing, right? You want to develop, you want to build winning habits. Now teams are going to be incentivized to build those winning habits. And I think if anything, the Bulls are one of the teams that are best set up to benefit from these new rules. Now, of course, where the Bulls have been the last few years under AK, thank God AK got fired when he got fired, because if these rules had been in place for the last 5 years, the Bulls probably would have had top 10, top 5 picks for the last. Now, we traded some of our first-round picks. We didn't have our own first-round picks in some of those years, so there you go on that one. The Orlando Magic would have benefited even more, but a team like the Chicago Bulls, that we've never really been a franchise that has really bottomed out. We've never been a franchise that is really like out. Like, we have had years of that. I'm not saying that we haven't, but we've never been a team that's just been like, yeah, we're gonna aim to have the worst record for the next 3 years. Like, we've always been a team that has tried to win, which is crazy when you look at some of our records over the years and the results that we've gotten. But for what it's worth, the Bulls are benefit from trying to develop their team the right way, right? And that's the reality of it, right? I think when you look at selecting 4, 15, 38, and 56, there's some questions about like how good will the Chicago Bulls actually be if those picks actually hit and you work and you have the right coach to develop those guys this year. I don't think the Bulls are going to be a bottom 3 team in the league. Now, I do think that teams aren't going to be as incentivized. Like the Washington Wizards, they were clearly trying to tank in freaking December, right? Like, you're talking about the way that they were pulling players out and things like that. Like, that was a team that was absolutely trying to bottom out the Utah Jazz. But it seems like the Jazz, with the trade for Jaren Jackson Jr., they're no longer going to be trying to bottom out either. So when you look at some of the teams that are going to be the worst teams in the league next year, I look at the Sacramento Kings. I think they're going to be very bad. The Memphis Grizzlies are probably going to be pretty bad, especially if they trade Ja Morant, right? You still look at the Washington Wizards. I know that they got Trey, they got AD. We don't know how many games AD is going to play. He may not even want to be there. Trae Young, I think, is a unrestricted free agent at the end of next season. He's probably just going to be getting up shots, right? We don't know how he's going to fit in with those young guys with Trey Johnson and those other players there. So I think they're going to be pretty bad. And if the Milwaukee Bucks do end up trading Giannis, which is a likely possibility, they're probably going to be worse. So that's right there, 4 or 5 teams that I think are going to be way worse than the Chicago Bulls, depending on how things shake out. So I don't think the Bulls are at risk of being a bottom 3 team next year. And I just don't think that. We still have veterans like Jalen Smith, like Trey Jones on this roster as well. So I don't think that's gonna happen, right? Like we'll see what happens in regards to that one, right? But teams like the Bulls are benefiting. I think the overarching thing that really is kind of funny in like a karma way is the fact that 2 things that the Bulls have been criticized very harshly by fans for over the last few years is not paying the luxury tax at times and also not bottoming out. And now with the way that the NBA is gone, with the second tax apron rules, the first tax apron rules, the repeater rules, and how we've now seen 22 teams in the league did not pay the luxury tax, you're seeing now the league as going the way Bulls have kind of always operated. Me and Pat have talked about this on Locked On Bulls. The Bulls are already set up in this new second and first tax apron era to operate because they basically always treated the luxury tax as a hard cap. So they've always treated it that way. So they never really had to adjust like these other teams have had to adjust, where we've seen teams send out talent, good talent, because they've had to adjust to that. The Bulls didn't have to do that, right? And now with the lottery reform as well, for Bulls fans that have said so long, and Bulls, content creators, the Matt Pecks, the Ricky O'Donnells of the world, the Mark Kays of the world, right? Like all these guys that have been for years, the Bulls need to bottom out. You need to just be bottom out. You need to be bottom out for 3 years, 4 years, and just get you're not benefited from that anymore, right? And I'm not saying that to necessarily call those guys out, right? It's more so to just say, simply put, it's no longer a strategy that just because you're bad, it automatically means you're worse off. So some of the Bulls fans before that have been saying things, and content creators like me that have been saying things like, hey, I want to see this team try to be good. I want to see you try to put your best foot forth, and wherever the lottery falls, let it fall. We've already, over the last few years, seen teams jump up that didn't have the worst records into getting the number 1 overall pick. Now, that didn't happen this year, but we've seen that happen, right? We've seen teams that had the worst record drop. And now with everything being so open as what it is, and the team with the worst record can fall as low as number 12, that is going to be something that it's just going to be interesting to see how that plays out over the next few years, and how, like I said, a team like the Bulls, who have never really tried to completely bottom out, now don't have to do that anymore to improve your team. Now, the way that this does impact other teams is that now, the worst teams in the league don't have a clear path to just be bad to get better. And okay. I mean, that's going to be an adjustment period now, because the first time a number 8 seed ends up with just think about this, right? And this was always the dangerous part of it. If you are an 8 seed in either the East or West, and let's say you were the 8 seed because you had injuries at the start of the season, but you can be the 8 seed in the league, and technically if you had injuries and you got healthy in the playoffs and you go to the NBA Finals, you can still have the number 1 overall pick in the draft. That's going to be an interesting thing. And I haven't dived into how the Thunder and all the picks that they've stacked are now affected by this, because I'm focused on the Bulls right now, but I may cover that over on the NBA Central. But let me know what you guys think down below. Now, hearing the lottery reform, how that has impacted the NBA and league as a whole, right? I think that this has to change the fan conversation. And for us content creators, it changes the conversation, because being terrible no longer guarantees the best draft odds, which means that NBA kind of just killed bottoming out being the best rebuild strategy, and how teams are going to benefit from that. And we'll see what's going to happen here. The Bulls, again, have not been a bottom 3 team, have not recently won the number 1 overall pick, own their own first round picks, have already said they're going to focus on development. So Bulls fans that were hoping that this team was going to bottom out to improve, you're going to see this team actually trying to win. So I think now begging for a tank is no longer the guarantee for your team to improve. But I want to move on from this. I want to talk about facts or cap, right? This is the new thing that we've brought to the team, and I think that it's been fun to do facts or cap. So is Sean Sweeney the Chicago Bulls guy? One thing that you'll see in a lot of conversations recently around the Chicago Bulls, and I want to be clear, I understand it, right, is that a lot of Bulls fans have been saying and asking recently, is Sean Sweeney the guy? And that is why the Chicago Bulls have not hired him, because he's still in this playoff run with the San Antonio Spurs. Shout out to them for forcing Game 7 last night, by the way. And so is the Chicago Bulls focusing or waiting on Sean Sweeney? We'll talk about that, right? I think when you look at this, the fan speculation all makes sense, right? Because the fact that the Bulls are waiting, the fact that we heard this can go well into June, it all aligns maybe with the Chicago Bulls waiting on Sean Sweeney. but it doesn't mean that they're the only team. The Orlando Magic outlets are all saying similar things, and even so much so that I heard from a source, right? And I'll leave it at that. The same source that gave me the Zach LaVine trade early and also the Ayo Dosunmu trade. Well, they gave me the Zach LaVine trade almost a week early and the Ayo Dosunmu trade earlier in the day before it was announced. So, but they've also had their sources tell them stuff that didn't come to fruition. But I have had from a source that the Orlando Magic are a team that wants to hire Sean Sweeney. It may even be so much that they're waiting to announce it until afterwards. So it's just counteracting things there. I think the thing that I'm taking from this is that maybe Sean Sweeney hasn't made his decision. I don't know if official offers have been made. I don't know if in-person interviews have been had, but it could be that these teams are in a holding pattern because maybe Sean Sweeney is looked at as the prize in the coaching market this offseason. And so you have teams waiting for Sean Sweeney to make his decision before they move on to other candidates. Could be what's happening here. So in the facts or cap part of it, I'll say right now it's cap. And I'll say it's cap because, like, if the Bulls wanted to hire Sean Sweeney, I don't think that there's anything to stop them from hiring it. But also outside of that, I'd say they're not the only team. There are a lot of, like, Orlando Magic or the other team that's been mentioned in this. Sean Sweeney is a big name out on the coaching market. And so I think that when you have other teams currently interested, I think, like, Sean Sweeney's worth waiting for. And that's the clear part of this. He is worth waiting for. So if that's what the Bulls are doing, no harm, no foul for me. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing or whatever else. I think my top three are still Chris Quinn, Sean Sweeney, Dave Bliss. Those are my top three, with Tiago Splitter and Johnnie Bryant closely behind those guys. So that would be my top 5 candidates here for the Chicago Bulls. And I think the benefit of it is the Bulls have a strong pool of candidates either way, right? So even if Sean Sweeney does decide to take the Orlando Magic job over the Chicago Bulls job, cool. Like, we can pivot towards Chris Quinn, Dave Bliss, Tiago Splitter, Johnnie Bryant, all guys that I think have a resume that makes sense. But like I've said, it's not about hiring the right resume. It's about hiring the right person, right? So that's what you have to look into with this. The Bulls coaching search is going to go the way it's going to go. And, you know, as the Spurs continue to go on in the playoffs, maybe even go on to the NBA Finals, we'll see what's going to happen in regards to that and how it plays out for the Chicago Bulls coaching search. But I think that Bryson Graham has compiled a list of guys that all make sense to varying degrees. The one guy that's on the list that the 2 guys on the list that I'm not as high on is James Borrego and Wes Unseld. And that's just because I think that they've shown already in their careers that they are better off as assistants. They've had opportunities as the head coach. And then a guy like Wes Unseld, he got a bad break. He got that Wizards team that then, you know, after he got there, they weren't planning on being a tanking team when he got the job, but then they made that swing to do that. So, you know, maybe he got a bad rap there. Maybe he can be a better head coach. But those are the 2 guys that's just like, if the Bulls were to hire, it feels like more transitional coaches, where I feel like the candidate pool that we have here could be guys that can be long-term head coaches for you. And that's kind of what I'd rather see for this team. But we'll see how it's going to go. Overall, let me know you guys' thoughts down below. Who are your favorite guys to land this job? And do you think that the Bulls are waiting on Sean Sweeney, and that is what's holding this up? Let me know what you guys think on that part down below. With that said, I want to finish the show talking about the NBA draft, right? And here's the thing. The number 15 pick in this draft for the Chicago Bulls is the real wild card. And here's what I mean by that. The top 4 is the top 4, right? I get it. And like I've said, I think that the conversation around pick number 4 has gotten to a place that it's gotten to because it's just boring, because we've all known who's going to be the top 4 picks in this draft for a while. But I do not think Darius Acuff is going to be there drafted at number 4. I've seen so many outlets talking about now Acuff's the next Derrick Rose, all this type of stuff, all that stuff. I get it. It is what it is. And I know that Darius Acuff really does have his guys that like him and his fans that want to see the Bulls draft him. I don't think that's that's actually going to happen, right? Possibility and probability are 2 very different things. Is it possible? Hell, it's possible the Bulls draft anybody who's there after you know the first 3 picks. But is it probable? I don't personally think so. But with that said, I do think that the number 15 pick has become such a wild card for a few different reasons. I look at the mock drafts almost every day, and I look at how draft experts are expecting this draft to go. And what I'm seeing in this is that between pick 6 to pick 20, there is so much variance and range in how people are predicting pick 6 through 20 to go. There's some mock drafts right now that have a Daymar going as high as number 6. Now, there's some that still have him going as low as number 12 or 13, right? And that's the interesting part of this, because a player that I think is one of the best defensive players in this draft, in Jaden Quantance, is a guy that by most mocks by some mocks is going to be there at number 15. But when you look at the way that things have updated over the last week, there's some mocks that have Jaden going in the top 10. Same thing for Yaxel Lindenberg, a player that at one point in time was easily a top 10 pick in this draft. Now some mocks have him going as low as number 15 or 16, right? So it just creates an interesting dichotomy there that I think that what we're seeing here, even from, and I focus on draft experts, not like random places that are doing their mocks or whatever, but draft experts, people that have covered the draft literally the whole season long. That is what they've covered, is the NBA draft and how it's ebbed and flowed through the NCAA season and now. When you look at the way that this draft's going to, and I think it's even happening in the conversation, I can't tell you guys enough how many times that I do a video or episode on pick number 15, and there are so many players that you guys say, well, he's not going to be there at number 15. And that is actually reflected in the mock drafts. When you look at the mock drafts, the top 5 commonly respected mock drafts, right? That the outlets that do this, there are a total of 22 players going between picks number 6 to pick number 20. Right? Now, keep in mind, that's only 14 picks. And so when people say somebody's not going to go or somebody's not going to be there at 15, there are legitimately 20-something players that people have. There are only 15 picks in the top 20. I hate to tell y'all that. There are only 15 picks in the top 20. And the Bulls sit in a place where they get to benefit from this hugely because at pick number 15, they have the first pick outside of the lottery. What that means is that if somebody does go, if Jaden Quantins does go in the lottery and Yaxel Lindenberg ends up falling out of the lottery, you can get him, right? If a guy like Hans Steinbeck, who was initially reported to be a lottery pick, falls out of the lottery, he could be there at the first pick outside of the lottery for the Chicago Bulls. In a lot of ways, pick number 15 has become the most interesting pick here for the Chicago Bulls because of the variance of talent that you can get. And I'd say this, because all these guys from pick number 6 to pick number 20, at some point by some mock were projected to be lottery round talent. The Bulls shape up to get a damn good player here at number 15. And when we talk about a rebuild and the state that the Bulls are in, that's the type of luck that the Bulls do need. This is an amazing place to be, right? You have Darius Cuff going as high as 5 in some mocks, as low as 8 in some, right? You have Jaden Quantins, Morez Johnson, lottery names that people have said to go in the lottery. One of those guys are probably going to fall. Everybody can't go in the top 15. And so because of that, this is where there are 20-something players that all have top 15 buzz. And the Bulls picking with the first pick outside of the lottery, they get a chance. Fans keep saying he won't fall that low, but with this much variance, somebody absolutely is falling that low. And pick number 15 is just as important as pick number 4 in a lot of ways for the Chicago Bulls. And I can't wait to see how that's going to develop for this team because that becomes a very interesting talking point for the Bulls this season. But that's going to do it for today's episode, man. The new lottery changes may sound like a lot at first, but I do think that the Bulls are set up to benefit from that as things right now. The Sean Sweeney speculation is great, and we'll see how the Bulls coaching search goes. I think they have a great opportunity to get a damn good coach one way or another, but that's great. But I want to hear from you guys. How do you feel about the lottery changes? How does that make you feel about Bulls potentially tanking going forward? And who is your top coaching candidate right now? I also want to hear from you guys. Who's your pick at number 15 for the Chicago Bulls? Let me know that down below. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. You can follow us at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform. You send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, bullscentralpod@gmail.com. And lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See you right if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Breaks Media.